Was Jesus mad, bad, or God? The famous syllogism due to C.S. Lewis is as follows. Jesus of Nazareth claimed to be divine, but this is an extravagant claim. Hence, one ought to prefer explanations of Jesus' claim other than it being true. In particular, it could be explained by Jesus either lying or else being deluded, and these explanations are to be preferred as less extravagant. However, Jesus shows no other symptoms of being a liar or of being mad. Hence, although the idea that Jesus was either dishonest or insane might seem to be less extravagant at first sight than the idea that Jesus' claim is true, in the wider context of Jesus' behaviour and character, it is in fact more extravagant. First counter to this syllogism. Jesus could have been honestly mistaken. Other contemporary figures had similar ideas. Response. None of them were Jews. The idea of a divine human is absolutely repugnant to Judaism because of its high notion of divinity. The Egyptian, Greek and Roman gods were not divine, in the sense that the God of Israel was understood by Jesus' contemporary countrymen to be divine. For any Jewish human being to have honestly thought himself to be divine would make him mad. Hence this counter is a vanishing force. It only seems to have force to someone who judges Christ outside of the applicable cultural context. Second counter to the syllogism. Jesus could have been an astute politician and was using words only in a rhetorical or ad hominem way for political ends. Hence, while Jesus knew very well that he wasn't really divine, he made this claim in a well-intentioned manner so as to promote certain benevolent political ends. Response. There is no indication in the Gospel account of what such ends might have been or that they were achieved. So this proposal is vacuous. Moreover, it merely seeks to justify lying by appealing to political ends, and this is at variance with the fact that Jesus is on record as disapproving of swearing oaths on the basis that one should always tell the truth anyhow. The real weakness of the mad, bad or God argument is that we do not know that Jesus did claim to be God. We only know that he is reported as so doing. Hence an alternate explanation is that his first Greek followers got carried away with ex-pagan enthusiasm and came to misunderstand Jesus as divine and convinced St. Paul of this error, who then convinced the writers of the Gospels to promote this mistaken view of Jesus. Response. This is much more difficult to refute, because it is carefully crafted like a set of Ptolemaic epicycles so as to fit all the facts as we now have them. However, this account is itself extravagant and has no substantive evidence in its favour. It implies the following ideas. 1. The resurrection of Christ is a myth, or else Christ rose from the dead without being divine. Both of these ideas are difficult to swallow. It is a matter of taste as to which is the less plausible. There is much to say about the resurrection in terms of its historic credibility, but this topic is not my immediate concern, and I shall say no more about this now. The miracles of Christ are either all misreported, or else Christ worked them without being divine. It is a matter of taste as to which is the less plausible, although Jewish prophets such as Moses, Elijah and Elisha are recorded as working miracles of similar extravagance. There is much to say about the miracles of Christ in terms of their historic credibility, but this topic is not my immediate concern, and I shall say no more about this now. 3. The Jewish Christians, including all the apostles, were persuaded to accept the divinity of Christ against all their Jewish instincts and tradition, and in spite of there being no need for them to believe such a thing so far as biblical prophecy and or rabbinic expectations regarding the Messiah were concerned. Now, the way in which Jesus generally claims to be divine is subtle, not direct. Indeed, it takes someone with an understanding of Jewish culture to recognise the I am sayings, which feature strongly in the Gospel of John, and the passing by of Jesus when he walked across the Sea of Galilee, as claims to divinity. If the writer of the fourth Gospel had gotten his ideas about Jesus' divinity from Greek thought, he would have more plausibly employed Greek rather than Jewish idiom to express it. How then did the Greek followers of Jesus get the idea that Jesus was divine? If the resurrection and miracles were concocted so as to bolster the emerging notion that Jesus was divine, why did people think that Jesus was divine before these stories of miracles ever existed? Moreover, in the Jewish tradition, miracles are typically associated with men of God, not men being God. The fact that a religion based on Jesus doesn't absolutely necessitate a belief in his divinity is proved by the emergence of Arianism as hugely popular in the 4th century. Given that Arius and his followers were very happy to follow Jesus as a non-divine though superhuman figure, and that this idea would have been much more acceptable to Jewish thought, it is difficult to grant the hypothesis of ex-pagan enthusiasm much weight. Similarly, the extreme success of Islam and lesser success of Sikhism shows that there is no imperative to account the founder of one's religion as divine. The tendency of some Buddhists to accord the Buddha divine honours, while other Buddhists are strict atheists, shows that in the polytheistic context of the Indian subcontinent, the temptation to do so is stronger. But this is not the context in which Christianity arose. Socrates was revered by Plato and others as being an exemplary human being, but was not accounted as divine. Why then should Greeks have accounted Jesus as divine when they didn't accord this status to the greatest of their own moral teachers? Elijah was reported to have worked great miracles and was taken up into heaven, but was not accounted as divine by the Jews. Why then should Jews have accounted Jesus as divine, even on the basis of him rising from the dead and ascending into heaven, when they didn't account this status to any of their previous heroes? The fact that the incarnation of God as man addresses certain fundamental philosophical problems in a profoundly satisfactory way makes Jesus' claim much less theoretically extravagant than at first it seems. Though for anyone in particular to claim to be God incarnate is, of course, personally extravagant.